Here's a look at the top one-on-one matchup from each Week 9 game in the NFL, starting with Minnesota and Baltimore, where Dalvin Cook will be head-to-head with linebacker Patrick Quinn and the Ravens' rush defense.
Mixon. Ooh, wow. Stone Queen is in there.
Cook is third in the NFL with 88.8 rushing yards per game and has 18 runs of 10-plus yards, second most in the league. He has run for 10-plus yards on 18.4% of his carries, second highest behind Derrick Henry. He'll be up against a Ravens defense that's allowed 86.1 rush yards per game to opponents, fourth fewest in the league, only allowing 4.2 yards per carry, 11th best. Quinn is barreling towards another 100-plus tackle year. He is tied for first on the team in tackles and tackles for a loss this season. The Ravens as a team have held every opposing running back to under 60 rushing yards this year, but they better make sure to wrap Cook up. According to PFF, Baltimore has the fourth highest missed tackle rate against the run. In Carolina, you've got a nice little revenge match. Gilmore going up against his old team and rookie QB Mac Jones. It didn't take Gilmore long to make his mark for keep pounding. In his Panthers debut, he picked off a pass from Matt Ryan. While in coverage in Week 8, Gilmore's receiver was targeted 4 times. He gave up just 2 receptions for only 19 yards according to PFF. Jones was interception prone in Week 3 when he was picked 3 times, but outside of that game, only 3 INTs over his other 7 contests, and he's top 10 in passing yards, and his 68.1 completion percentage is 8th best.
And people have been wondering about going deep for New England. They keep saying, when is Mac Jones going to take the shot?
Have to wait and see how often Jones is willing to test the former Patriot standout. In Dallas, it's QB versus CB, with Dak Prescott trying to move the ball against Patrick Surtain II and the Broncos defense. Prescott's stats speak for themselves. He's the only QB that ranks in the top 5 in completion percentage, passing yards per game, and passer rating this season, and he has a 16-4 TD to INT ratio.
Throws it down the field, it's caught at the 10, and this game is over!
But Denver's defense is holding opposing QBs to the 4th lowest passer rating, is tied for the 2nd fewest pass TDs allowed in the NFL, and have held QBs to the 2nd lowest completion percentage. And leading the way for their secondary, the Rook. Surtain II has 1 pick, 7 passes defensed, and he's held QBs to a sub-80 rating when the receiver he's covering has been targeted, allowing 54.4% of passes to be completed, 11th lowest in the league. He can't cover Cooper and Lamb at the same time, but watch to see how often Dak targets the one Surtain is covering throughout the game. On to the Battle of the Oranges. Joe Burrow's Bengals trying to rebound against Myles Garrett's Browns, and Garrett's ability to pressure Burrow could determine the winner in this one. Burrow is currently ranked top 6 in passing yards, passing TDs, yards per attempt, and passer rating, and he's also 9th in completion percentage.
Oh, there's pressure on the play by Lawson. To the end zone, caught for a touchdown!
However, Burrow's passer rating falls from 114.4 when facing no pressure to 82.9 when pressured per Next Gen Stats. He's also tied for the 2nd most INTs in the NFL with 9, and is tied for the 8th most sacks taken.
From the side and brought down in the play. Ball's loose.
So cue Mr. Garrett and the Browns pass rush, which ranks top 5 in sacks, QB hits, and pressure rate. Garrett himself is the NFL leader in sacks with 10.5 and QB hits with 20. The Browns are one of 4 teams in the NFL that have recorded 2+ sacks in each of their games this season, and Burrow has been sacked 2+ times in 5 of his last 8 starts. Down in Duval, it's Josh Allen versus Josh Allen. And no, Allen isn't looking at himself in a mirror. It's the Jags pass-rushing Allen versus the Bills pass-throwing Allen. This is the Allens' first ever meeting, too. The Buffalo Allen has 5 straight 100-plus passer rating games, the longest such streak in his career.
Allen over the middle to Beasley. He's got another one.
And part of the reason he's been on fire, his protection. No team has allowed fewer sacks than Buffalo, Allen being taken down just 8 times. Jacksonville's pass rush hasn't generated much pressure or many sacks. However, Allen is coming off a 2-sack performance against Seattle. He has 4.5 QB takedowns and leads the Jags in QB hits, too. Either way, though, Josh Allen wins. In Miami, it's a top-tier wide receiver cornerback showdown. The Texans' Brandon Cooks likely seeing a lot of Miami corner Xavier Howard. Cooks is heading for another 1,000-plus yard season. He has over 500 yards through 8 games. His 51 receptions, 4th most in the league. And talk about your one-man bands. Cooks has been targeted 70 times this season. The next most for the Texans, just 25. He has made good on most of those targets, though, hauling in close to 73% of passes thrown his way. His QB's passer rating when they've targeted him, 95.2. That makes him a tough cover for Howard. He is allowed a high rating, but he's only allowing 55.1% of passes to be completed when his receiver is targeted 13th best. He needs to contain Cooks because the Dolphins' defense ranks in the bottom 2 in passing yards, passing TDs, and 20-plus yard completions allowed this season. To New Orleans we go now. Calvin Ridley announced he is stepping away from football to focus on his well-being, and that makes rookie tight end Kyle Pitts the focal point of Atlanta's passing attack this week, which means Saints safety Malcolm Jenkins will have his eyes on him all game. Pitts is the current Falcons leader in targets, receptions, and receiving yards this year, and he ranks top 10 among all tight ends in key receiving categories. But he's not only up against a Saints defense that has recorded 11 interceptions this season, tied for the most in the NFL, but they've also held opponents to a 61.2 completion percentage, 4th lowest in the league.
Brady steps up and throws another interception.
New Orleans is one of 4 teams to not allow a TD to a tight end, and they've allowed the 6th fewest receiving yards to tight ends as well, in part because they have one of the better safeties in the game in Jenkins. He is tied for the 5th lowest completion percentage allowed among safeties and has a rating of just 80.2 when targeted. To New York now, the Giants need their pass rush duo of Leonard Williams and Azeez Ojulari to get to Derek Carr 3 times. That's the magic number for throwing Carr off his game.
Carr fires. Burrow. Touchdown.
Carr has been on fire this season. He's 2nd in the NFL in passing yards per game and is on a 17-game pace to throw for an NFL record 5,513 passing yards. He is vulnerable to taking sacks, though. And in the 4 games he's been sacked 3 or more times, his rating has been under 100. Vegas losing the last 2 games that happened.
And he does what he does best, puts a quarterback on the deck.
But when he's taken 2 sacks or less, rating over 100 in each. Raiders 3-0 in those games, including winning the last 2 when that's been the case.
Carr looking for Drake, and he got it! Drake inside the 5, and he's in for a touchdown!
The Giants have allowed a 68.4 completion percentage to opposing QBs this season, 28th in the NFL, and only 5 teams have allowed more passing TDs than the Giants. That's in part because their pass rush hasn't generated much pressure or many QB hits, but they have averaged over 2 sacks a game, and Williams has 5.5 QB takedowns, and so does Ojulari.
With a second wave of Ojulari finishes it off.
So if they can break on through to the other side and flatten Carr's tires 3 or more times, maybe they can pull the upset. In Philly this week, we'll get to see if LA's Derwin James can stop Jalen Hurts through the air and, more importantly, along the ground. The Eagles are coming off a blowout win over the Lions, where they really took it to Detroit along the ground. Over 230 rush yards on over 5 yards a carry. Hurts leading the way with 71 rush yards. That kind of ground game can do serious damage to the Chargers if they don't shore some things up.
Jalen Hurts is a different type of athlete. He's not just going to go down.
No team has allowed more yards per game than they have. No team has given up more than their 5.1 yards a carry, and they rank 28th in runs of 10-plus yards allowed.
Give it to Hunt off the left side. He's driving in for a touchdown.
Can't blame James for much of that, though. He leads LA in tackles, and the runner-up is 19 behind him. He also has 3 tackles for a loss. But him and his mates are facing an Eagles rush attack that's second in yards per game, tied for the most rushing TDs, and hits at 5 yards a pop.
Takes off. Wow.
And Hurts not only leads them in rush yards with 432, he's averaging just under 6 a run, so he may be able to run James and the Chargers off the field with another loss. The Packers and Chiefs face off in what was supposed to be a marquee matchup, and the game will still feature plenty of stars, including KC's Tyreek Hill and Green Bay's cornerback Eric Stokes. Hill scored last week and had close to 100 yards, but more importantly, was targeted 18 times, 11 more than the next highest on the team. Hill leads the NFL in receptions with 64, has 18 more targets than Travis Kelce for the year, and his 735 yards are fifth most in the NFL.
Touchdown! Tyreek Hill! And the Chiefs score first!
Green Bay's pass defense has played well, though, limiting QBs to a sub-90 rating and holding them to less than 7 yards per attempt, and their rookie has shined for them, so he undoubtedly will draw Hill throughout the game.
That's 2 good plays by Eric Stokes.
Stokes has only allowed 56.3% of passes thrown his way to be completed, holding QBs to an 84.5 rating when his receiver has been targeted. We'll have to see what those numbers look like when he tries covering a cheetah. Nice midseason NFL West matchup this week pits Kyler Murray against San Francisco's Nick Bosa. Bosa's speed is just as hard to deal with as Kyler's. He has the 8th fastest get-off in the league this year, and that get-off speed helped him pick up 2 sacks last week. He has 7 now for the season. He's helped the 49ers put up the 10th highest sack rate.
Fields trying to get away from the pressure, unable to do so.
However, Murray has a plus 18.1 completion percentage over expectation when under pressure this season. If he maintained that, it would be the highest completion percentage over expectation versus pressure in a season since 2016. Murray's passer rating when the heat is on is 102, his completion percentage almost 60. Watch to see if he can keep that up with Bosa bearing down on him. With no King Henry for the Titans, wideout A.J. Brown will become a focal point of Tennessee's offense, and he'll likely see a lot of Rams corner Jalen Ramsey.
And Jalen Ramsey all over the place.
Ryan Tannehill has a passer rating of 113.9 when targeting Brown this season, along with 509 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Expect to see Ramsey close to the line of scrimmage in this one, as he has allowed the second lowest passer rating in the league when in press coverage. In addition, quarterbacks are completing just 57.9% of throws when Ramsey is in press.
How about Jalen Ramsey? I mean, that's outstanding.
We'll see which one of these 2 stars will shine the brightest in LA on Sunday. Then come Monday night, keep your eye on the cat and mouse game between Big Ben and Robert Quinn. Pittsburgh's quick passing offense, led by Roethlisberger, will go up against a hungry Bears pass rush led by Quinn.
And it's the big man, Robert Quinn, who is able to get out for the tackle.
Roethlisberger will try and negate Quinn's impact by continuing to get rid of the ball quickly. He's been getting the ball out of his hands expeditiously this season. According to Next Gen Stats, Big Ben has the quickest average time to throw in the NFL at just 2.3 seconds, and 62.5% of his throws come out in under 2.5 seconds. That also means the Steelers' QB is also at the bottom of the league when it comes to yards per attempt.
2 fake handoffs and a little toss it is. Nothing there, gain of 3.
Meantime, Chicago's defense has recorded 21 sacks this season, tied for 4th most in the NFL. With no Khalil Mack, it leaves Quinn as the big pass rush threat.
Hit by Robert Quinn, who has had a resurgent season.
He has 5.5 sacks and leads Chicago with 24 QB pressures, according to Next Gen Stats. So he'll be key in this matchup, especially on plays Roethlisberger holds the ball to try and take a deep shot.
Now Roethlisberger's going to air it out, and it's caught in stride. Deontay Johnson, a 50-yard touchdown strike. Roethlisberger going for the end zone, touchdown! But they hand it off, Harris up top, touchdown Pittsburgh!
And on
Second and goal. Is back to throw it. Throws for the goal line. Touchdown, Pittsburgh!